In the clear light of a Texas morning, a man's fist connected with my wife's jaw. He wore a vest emblazoned with the word compliance, a stark contrast to Emily's quiet purpose. She hadn't sought confrontation. Her focus was on the encroaching weeds in our garden. My wife, a dedicated educator, embodies a certain kind of woman, one capable of simultaneously dissecting academic prose and tending to simmering marinara. That Tuesday, she was kneeling by our rose bushes, dressed in a simple white gardening shirt, her hair neatly pinned back, a smudge of earth gracing her cheek. It was an utterly unremarkable day until a notice, a garish splash of neon red, appeared affixed to our fence. Bold lettering declared a violation. Fence 2 in too tall. Flag display. Unapproved. The notice warned of escalating fines within 72 hours. Emily read it, then reread it, her brow furrowed. She retrieved her phone, murmuring, "We're not tackling this without documentation." It was her ingrained teacher's instinct. Gather evidence before engaging. 15 years of marriage to a Navy man had reinforced that principle. Evidence serves as a bulwark against bullies. Just then, two men in tactical vests strode onto our lawn, projecting an air of hostile authority as if they were securing a hostile zone. The first, Vince, possessed the imposing physique of a bouncer, yet sweat trickled down his chest, straining the zipper of his vest. The second, Tony, was muscular but undisciplined, his counterfeit badge dangling askew, a testament to its own shame. "Ma'am, cease recording enforcement action immediately," Vince commanded, his voice attempting authority but falling short, sounding more like a disgruntled security guard than a law enforcement officer. Emily remained unfazed, her composure as steady as when she addressed her 6th grade class. She held her phone steady, her voice calm. "This is my private property. You are being recorded." This exchange should have concluded the encounter. However, Tony's jaw tightened, his fist clenching. He advanced 2 steps and delivered a blow. The impact echoed with the sharp crack of a firearm through the tranquil cul-de-sac. Emily's head snapped back, her phone skittering across the grass. The screen fractured, but the recording continued, the lens capturing the unfolding scene. She stumbled, instinctively raising a hand to her injured cheek, where a dark, crimson bloom began to spread. Blood welled at the corner of her mouth. No tears fell, no screams escaped, but her eyes widened in disbelief. Who anticipates a physical assault over a fence infraction? The neighborhood fell silent. Curtains twitched. Mrs. Rodriguez's garden hose drooped, forgotten. A distant dog's bark was abruptly cut short. Every observer bore witness. Everyone comprehended that a boundary had been irrevocably crossed. A primal fury surged through me. 15 years of marriage, 3 combat deployments, and I had never witnessed Emily suffer such a blow. A white-hot, blinding rage consumed me, yet it was a controlled, focused fury, the kind that dismantles rather than disperses. The slam of our screen door behind me drew every eye. Though I no longer wore a uniform, my faded Marine Corps t-shirt and jeans, coupled with my bare feet on the porch, conveyed a silent authority. My posture, balanced and squared, my breathing deliberate, served as its own weapon. The very atmosphere shifted. The 2 enforcers stiffened, their bravado evaporating like morning mist. "I am a Navy SEAL," I stated, my voice even, devoid of boastfulness, simply a declaration of fact. "You have just assaulted my wife." "A regrettable decision," Vince sneered, but I detected a flicker of apprehension in his eyes. Tony's fist relaxed slightly. My tone then altered, adopting the measured, chilling cadence I had employed in hostile territories. "Stand down, hands where I can see them. This is your final warning." The command hung in the heat, a drawn blade. Instead of compliance, Vince launched himself at me with the reckless charge of a linebacker. He lacked strategy, relying solely on brute force and the misguided belief that size equates to power. I sidestepped smoothly, years of training rendering the movement instinctive. He missed me by a considerable margin, his momentum carrying him forward. His boots caught the edge of the porch step, and the subsequent sickening thud as his face met the wooden riser, was followed by a pained cry. He rolled over, blood streaming from his nose, saturating his vest and the grass. Witnessing his partner's incapacitation, Tony abandoned any pretense of authority, resorting to wild, telegraphed haymakers. I evaded his clumsy swings, sidestepping with ease. Gravity then intervened, sending him toppling into our sprinkler system. The jet of water struck his jaw with a sharp, percussive snap, his groan dissolving into unintelligible gibberish as drool mixed with the water cascading down his chin. Both men were incapacitated within 30 seconds. Emily's phone lay in the grass, its screen shattered but still recording, capturing every detail. The swing, the impact, the stumble, the blood. It was irrefutable digital evidence against these impostors. Emily retrieved it, wincing, the swelling on her cheek already darkening. Her voice, though shaky, remained resolute. "Still recording," she whispered. "That's my wife. Stronger than most men I've fought alongside. Our neighborhood was wide awake now." Agnes peeked from behind her lace curtains, iPad in hand, filming with an intensity that suggested her life depended on it. Carl from next door, his wrench in hand, stared in stunned silence. Mrs. Rodriguez stood frozen, her watering can limp, her eyes wide with shock. The scene had transformed from a domestic dispute into a public spectacle, a real-time demonstration of injustice. Vince groaned, clutching his face. "You broke my nose," he croaked, his voice cracking with adolescent pitch. The zipper on his vest finally gave way, revealing a t-shirt proclaiming him the world's greatest dad, an irony that cut deeper than my physical blow. Tony attempted to stammer a pronouncement of arrest, but his dislocated jaw rendered his words incoherent mush. He resembled a toddler who had just bitten his tongue. I offered no taunts, no further aggression. I simply retrieved my phone and dialed 911. "This is Jack Harper at 2147 Magnolia Drive. I require law enforcement and emergency medical services. 2 individuals have assaulted my wife on private property. Both require medical attention, as this is the adult response even when imbeciles attempt to play soldier on one's lawn." As I ended the call, Vince's phone, discarded in the grass, caught my eye. Its screen, cracked but illuminated, displayed a text notification. "Boss lady, use force if needed. J." The timestamp was 2 minutes prior to the assault. Emily leaned in, her phone camera capturing the digital testament. Her swollen cheek trembled, but her eyes gleamed with sharp intelligence. "Got it," she whispered. Distant sirens grew louder, a crescendo of impending justice. Our neighbors exchanged hushed words, their gazes shifting between the groaning enforcers and the glowing screen in my hand. My jaw tightened. Whoever Jay was, this was no random act. Someone had orchestrated this. Someone believed assaulting my wife over fence regulations was a viable strategy. Emily's fingers brushed mine. Her voice, soft but steady, declared, "That's our first lead." I nodded, and for the first time since the impact, a cold smile touched my lips. This was no longer about fence height. This was war. By the time the sirens wailed down Magnolia Drive, the street no longer resembled a quiet suburban enclave, but a modern battlefield. Vince lay groaning in the grass, blood soaking his vest. Tony sat propped against a sprinkler post, his jaw askew, muttering incoherent sounds as water sprayed his face, glittering in the harsh sunlight. Emily, her cheek a vivid crimson, kept her phone steady, documenting every detail. Our neighbors had congregated, some filming with their own devices, others whispering theories like market vendors. However, no one offered aid to the downed enforcers. No one wished to align themselves with men who had just assaulted a teacher on our own property. Then, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Jesus, Jack! What happened here?" Ray Delgado, our neighbor from 2 houses down, emerged from his home, dressed in the casual attire of retirement, cargo shorts, and a Hawaiian shirt. His handshake was firm, his eyes sharp with the discernment of someone who had witnessed his share of crime scenes. A former police officer, he had served 25 years before such HOA dramas infiltrated his life. He surveyed Emily's injured cheek, then the two incapacitated men. "These idiots leave more evidence than a bank robber with a hangover," he remarked. I handed him Vince's phone. "The boss lady. Use force if needed." Text still illuminated. Ray whistled softly. "You've got yourself a smoking gun." Paramedics arrived first, securing Vince to a stretcher while he lamented his broken nose. Tony attempted to resist, but his injured jaw rendered his protest unintelligible. Their tactical vests appeared incongruous against the pristine white of the ambulance sheets. Then the police cruisers arrived, their flashing lights painting the manicured lawns in hues of red and blue. Officers exited, the genuine article this time. A single glance at Emily's face elicited grim nods. Assault was evident, and the spurious badges on the vests only compounded the offense, impersonating authority. Statements were taken, phones exchanged. Emily presented her video, and I provided the glowing screen with the incriminating text. The officers exchanged knowing glances. They had encountered HOA disputes before, but never one escalating to this degree. Ray leaned in, his voice low. "Community Compliance Group. That's what their patches signify. I've had dealings with them. Private contractors, no real authority, just hired muscle. Jennifer Allen's been using them." The name resonated like a blow. Jennifer Allen, the HOA president, the woman who had been systematically issuing violation notices for months, wielding board power like a petty monarch. "Are you suggesting she ordered this?" I inquired. Ray shrugged, his eyes hardening. "That's how it appears. If so, this extends far beyond fines and fence heights. This is conspiracy, possibly worse." Emily clasped my hand, her grip tightening. "She tracked us. She planned this. It wasn't random, Jack." The murmurs of the onlookers intensified, like an awakening beehive. Agnes, the solitary widow across the street, raised her tablet like a shield. "I filmed everything," she announced nervously. "If Jennifer believes she can rule this neighborhood like a dictator, she's mistaken." Carl, grease still on his hands from his socket wrench, shifted uneasily. He muttered something about maintaining peace and retreated to his garage, but I observed the perspiration on his brow, a mix of fear and perhaps guilt. The police loaded Vince and Tony into the ambulances. One officer provided me with a case number. "We'll be in touch. This won't be a swift resolution. HOA disputes rarely are." But this was no longer a mere HOA dispute. This was an act of aggression on our very doorstep. As the cruisers departed, Ray crossed his arms, his gaze fixed on Jennifer Allen's residence down the block. The curtains were drawn, the porch deserted, silent as a fortress before an assault. "She won't cease here," Ray murmured. "Trust me, Jack. I know her kind. Jennifer doesn't concede. She escalates." Emily's swollen cheek brushed my shoulder as she leaned closer. "Then we retaliate with greater force." I nodded, the gravity of the situation settling in my chest. We were no longer defending our fence. We were defending our family, our neighbors, and potentially the entire community. Jennifer Allen had just initiated the real conflict. That evening, after the ambulances had departed and an uneasy silence descended upon the neighborhood, our doorbell rang. Emily opened it to find Agnes Porter, our widowed neighbor, renowned for her lace curtains and an abundance of cat photographs, clutching a manila envelope as if it contained radioactive material. Her hands trembled, yet her chin was set with an uncharacteristic resolve. "I can't keep this to myself any longer," she whispered. We invited her inside. Seated at our kitchen table, Agnes's eyes darted towards the window as if anticipating Jennifer Allen's arrival. "I've been assisting her," Agnes admitted, her voice wavering. "Jennifer made me feel important. She called me her eyes and ears. She asked me to document who returned home late, who received visitors, who neglected their trash bins. I thought it was mere gossip." She slid the envelope across the table. Inside were dozens of photographs and pages from a black notebook, each captured on her phone. Dates, addresses, monetary amounts, and personal annotations in Jennifer's distinctive script filled the pages. Emily spread them out like pieces of a puzzle. A chill ran down my spine. Each entry was meticulously detailed, with columns for name, violation, amount, and leverage. Beside each entry were details that no homeowners association should possess. Mrs. Chen, purple mailbox, $500, recent divorce filing. Rodriguez family, flag height plus $300, custody battle ongoing. Delgado, barking dog, $75, retired police officer, limited income leverage. And then the entry that struck the hardest. Mitchell Carl, deck permit plus late fees equals $2,500. Lien filed, high compliance potential. I met Emily's gaze. Her bruised cheek made her appear like a warrior refusing to yield. She's not managing a neighborhood, I stated. She's running an intelligence operation. Agnes nodded miserably. She called it her control system. Said every community needs pressure points for order. She convinced me it was for stability, but it was always about control. Ray arrived just in time to survey the scattered documents. He scanned one page and let out a low whistle. This isn't HOA management. This is racketeering. She's tracking vulnerabilities like a mob boss. I clenched my fists, anger resurging. And she ordered those thugs to assault my wife. Emily gently touched my arm. We have proof now, Jack. Hard proof. Agnes's voice cracked as tears welled. I didn't know she would go this far. I swear I didn't. But after today, I couldn't live with myself if I remained silent. I leaned forward, my tone softening. You did the right thing, Agnes. This changes everything. Ray, however, was not smiling. He tapped the final page with his finger. The handwriting was different, sharper, more aggressive. At the bottom, underlined twice, were the words, Phase 2. If legal fails, escalate pressure. GL backup plan, ready? Ray looked at me, his expression grim. She's not acting alone. Someone else is involved, and from the looks of it, they've already planned the next move. The kitchen fell silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. Emily stared at the words, Phase 2, as if they portended a death sentence. Agnes dabbed her eyes with a tissue, whispering, I believe she's planning something worse than fines. I gathered the photographs back into the envelope, each page a potential nail in Jennifer Allen's coffin. But one thought gnawed at me. If this was Phase 2, what on earth could Phase 3 entail? The Polk County Courthouse exuded the sterile scent of bleach and an undercurrent of fear. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the marble floors amplified every nervous footstep. The benches creaked under the weight of neighbors who had assembled to witness the proceedings. I wore my finest navy suit, the same one donned for ceremonies overseas. Emily looked striking in her red dress, projecting an aura of resilience rather than victimhood. Ray, armed with a briefcase brimming with documents and evidence, exuded the quiet confidence of his former police profession. Jennifer Allen sat at the opposing table, flanked by a lawyer whose expensive attire suggested a valuation exceeding half the homes on Magnolia Drive. She offered no acknowledgement in our direction, instead whispering, scribbling, and smirking as if the outcome were already predetermined. Then, Carl Mitchell entered the courtroom. For a fleeting moment, I believed he might join us or at least occupy a seat in the neutral gallery. Instead, he proceeded directly to Jennifer's side, settling into the front row, his gaze fixed resolutely on the floor. A collective murmur swept through the gallery, the unspoken acknowledgement that betrayal often manifests as a sharp intake of breath when trust crumbles. When Carl was sworn in, his hands trembled so violently that the bailiff steadied the Bible for him. He avoided my gaze, Emily's gaze, his eyes fixed somewhere beyond us. Your Honor, he began, his voice wavering but practiced. Jack Harper threatened me and my family. He stated that if I did not support him, I would face the same consequences as those enforcement officers. Gasps rippled through the assembled observers. Emily's nails dug into my palm. Carl continued his rapid recitation, as if speed would somehow alleviate the chokehold of his words. My children walk past his residence daily. When a Navy SEAL articulates his capabilities, one believes him. He paused, wiping sweat from his brow. I could not risk my family's safety over $2,500 in fines. Mrs. Allen offered to resolve my debt if I testified truthfully regarding his threats. I had no alternative. He sat back, appearing as though he had ingested poison and prayed for immediate relief. The judge frowned, making notes. To any observer unfamiliar with the intricacies of the situation, Carl's plea might have seemed desperate and sincere. Jennifer's smile widened, but Ray remained composed. He requested permission to present new evidence. Judge Martinez nodded. Ray then activated Emily's phone, the video from the community meeting 3 nights prior filling the courtroom speakers. Carl's own voice echoed, "Jack Harper demonstrated remarkable restraint. I've known soldiers, and Jack is a good man. I fully support him in this situation." Carl's face visibly crumpled in real time. His own words served as his condemnation. The neighbors in the gallery erupted in a cacophony of whispers and pointed fingers. Ray continued his presentation, displaying Agnes's photographs enlarged to poster size, revealing Jennifer's control system entries with stark clarity. Mitchell, $2,500 debt, leverage opportunity, compliance expected. The judge peered over her spectacles. "Mr. Mitchell, your testimony today directly contradicts both your prior statements and this documentary evidence. Were you being untruthful then, or are you being untruthful now?" Carl broke. The man who had feigned conviction moments earlier now trembled with genuine despair. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "I'm sorry, I couldn't lose my house, my children. Mrs. Allen promised she'd clear the debt if I helped her." The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted instantly. Gasps transformed into glares, directed not at me, but at Jennifer. Judge Martinez's tone was glacial. "This court regards perjury with utmost seriousness, Mr. Mitchell. However, in light of evidence suggesting coercion, leniency may be considered." Her words implied that if Carl cooperated fully with the ongoing investigation, his sentence might be mitigated. Jennifer's lawyer scrambled, whispering urgently, but Jennifer's carefully constructed composure fractured. Her smile faltered. For the first time, her mask slipped. As Carl wept into his hands, the judge turned her attention to Jennifer. "Mrs. Allen, this court now has grounds to believe you engaged in intimidation and subornation of perjury." The gavel's sharp crack resonated like thunder. Emily squeezed my hand, whispering through clenched teeth, "She's faltering, Jack. We have her cornered." Perhaps. But as Jennifer leaned across the table, hissing something into Carl's ear on her way out, his face drained of all color. Ray observed it as well. He murmured softly, "She still has leverage over him. Something more potent than money." In that moment, I knew the battle was far from concluded. The morning after the court proceedings, the air in our kitchen felt heavier than the typical Texas humidity. Emily's cheek remained swollen, yet she moved with the determined grace of a teacher unwilling to let pain dictate her day. I sat at the table, nursing coffee and reviewing a notebook filled with license plate numbers. Sunlight, slicing through the blinds, cast prison bar shadows across the papers, a fitting visual metaphor. We were no longer simply neighbors. We were inhabitants of Jennifer Allen's meticulously constructed suburban penitentiary. Then my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A single message appeared. "Your wife works at that school, correct? Public places can be unpredictable." A friend? My blood ran cold. Emily read the message over my shoulder. Her face paled, then flushed crimson with rage. "Jack, they're threatening my school. My students." Her hand instinctively reached for her phone, capturing screenshots of the message, saving it to her cloud drive. The teacher's reflex. Document first, process emotion later. But her hands trembled, and I recognized that look, a visceral echo from Afghanistan, the moment civilians realized they had been marked by insurgents. Ray materialized 10 minutes later, his familiar Hawaiian shirt now accompanied by the old badge case, habitually clipped to his belt. He scanned the incoming text message, his jaw clenching. "This transcends HOA disputes," he stated flatly. "We're on federal ground now. Targeting a school that attracts the Bureau's attention is a serious matter." Emily's voice faltered, the terrified wife momentarily eclipsing the teacher. "They've been monitoring me, Jack. My daily routine, when classes end. Who knows the extent of their surveillance?" Agnes arrived, her eyes still red-rimmed from recent weeping, another envelope clutched in her hand. She spread fresh photographs of Jennifer's black book across the table. This time, the notations were more pointed, the handwriting laced with palpable anger. One line stood out, glaring at them. Phase 3, targeting public institutions. Maximum pressure. Emily stifled a gasp. "She's resorting to involving children." I absorbed the words, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. Jennifer Allen had already orchestrated fake officers to assault my wife and manipulated Carl into committing perjury. Now she was contemplating an act that crossed every conceivable ethical boundary. "Children," Agnes sobbed. "I never imagined she would stoop that low. I truly believed she merely desired dominion over lawns and property lines. But this is pure malevolence." Ray swiftly contacted an old associate within law enforcement, his tone clipped and businesslike. "I have a situation. A suburban HOA president is issuing terroristic threats. I require immediate digital forensics assistance." Upon hanging up, he met my gaze with an expression I knew all too well, the look of a seasoned officer confronting a threat exceeding his jurisdiction. "She's not posturing, Jack. Individuals like her don't make idle threats. They probe boundaries until they're definitively stopped." Emily leaned against the kitchen counter, her phone vibrating incessantly with messages from the school administration. Parents were in a state of panic, and rumors were already spreading like wildfire, far outpacing any factual accounts. She pressed a hand to her forehead. "If anything happens to those children, I'm done with her," she declared, her voice hardening to steel. "Nothing will transpire. Not while I'm alive." Yet, even as I uttered the words, a seed of doubt began to sprout. Jennifer's black book wasn't merely a collection of notes, it was an intelligence dossier. It contained names, schedules, leverage points. If she had begun applying this information to Sunset Elementary, then every school bell, every dismissal time, every unsecured gate represented a potential vulnerability. That night, sleep eluded me. I sat by the window, my gaze fixed on Jennifer's darkened house. The porch light flickered once, then extinguished. The silence was profound, unnervingly so. At precisely 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed once more, an unknown number displayed on the screen. A new message arrived. "Phase 3 activated. School security is weaker than they anticipate." Emily stirred in her sleep, sensing the palpable tension in the room. "What is it?" I showed her the screen. Her breath hitched. She grasped my hand with such force that it pained me. The conflict that had once been confined to our lawn was now encroaching directly upon her classroom. We convened at a Denny's off the highway, the quintessential establishment where the coffee bore the burnt essence of overbrewing and the booths carried the lingering aroma of bacon grease. It was neutral territory, public enough to maintain a semblance of civility. I identified him immediately, a man with a weathered face, a faded Marine Corps tattoo on his forearm, and a limp in his gait that spoke of old combat wounds. He slid into the booth opposite me, offering no smile, only a firm nod. "Jack Harper," he stated, his voice a rough gravel. "Greg Lamb. I'm Jennifer's ex-husband." That name struck me like a physical blow. "GL's contingency plan is in effect. Have you been observing?" I inquired. He took a sip of his coffee, his face contorting slightly. 15 years married to her. You learn to recognize patterns. Her escalation has been ongoing for months. After what she did to your wife, I couldn't remain a passive observer." He retrieved a manila folder from his trucker jacket and slid it across the table. Inside lay bank statements, phone logs, and email printouts, a decade's worth of evidence. "She informed everyone I perished in a training exercise," he remarked with a bitter smirk. "Easier than admitting she drove me away. What she failed to anticipate was my penchant for keeping meticulous records." I began flipping through the pages, uncovering payments from HOA accounts to shadowy entities with names like Community Compliance Group and Legal Intimidation Services, alongside transfers from joint accounts she had never closed post-divorce. Thousands of dollars had been funneled into her private enforcement apparatus. However, the most significant revelation wasn't documented on paper, it was audio. Greg placed an old smartphone on the table and pressed play. Jennifer's slurred voice filled the booth, clearly intoxicated, but undeniably her. "Greg, you bastard. I will destroy anyone who reminds me of you. Military types consider themselves so formidable. I retained those compliance goons to teach that SEAL's wife a lesson. She deserved it for documenting my enforcement actions." Emily's bruised cheek flashed in my mind's eye. My grip tightened on the tabletop. "She contacted me every month," Greg explained. "Always inebriated, always issuing threats. 2 years ago, I commenced recording. I suspected someday she would overstep her bounds." He played another clip. Jennifer's voice dripping with venom again. "Carl is weak. Indebtedness renders individuals pliable. Phase 2 proved successful. Phase 3 will shatter them all. Maximum impact." The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. This wasn't merely the rantings of an overzealous HOA president. This was a woman orchestrating operations with the precision of a battlefield commander. Greg leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. "You believe she's dangerous now? You haven't witnessed her at full throttle. She doesn't merely seek dominion over a neighborhood, Jack. She aims to obliterate anyone who evokes my memory. You, your wife, any military personnel she cannot control." He slid a USB drive across the table. "Everything I have. Emails, recordings, financial records. Sufficient to bring her down." I pocketed it, my mind racing. Why now? Why intervene? He gazed out the window at the flickering neon sign of Denny's. "Because Phase 3 is no longer theoretical. She sent me a text this morning, stated school security was less robust than they believed, said maximum impact was imminent." He paused, his voice lowering. "You've witnessed her capacity for action. If we don't put a stop to her, the next headline won't be about HOA drama. It will concern children." For a prolonged moment, neither of us spoke. The ambient diner noise receded, replaced by the profound weight of his revelation. Finally, I posed the sole question that truly mattered. "Greg, are you here to assist me in stopping her, or to complete what she began?" His response was quiet, resolute. "I'm here because I should have halted her years ago. Do not commit the same error I did." As I departed Denny's, the USB drive felt heavier than any weapon I had carried overseas, for within it lay not merely evidence but a declaration. Jennifer Allen had initiated a conflict extending far beyond fences and flags, and she was far from finished. The community center had never been so crowded. Folding chairs lined the walls, and neighbors stood packed shoulder to shoulder, their voices buzzing with rumor and speculation. There was no idle chatter about sprinkler schedules tonight, no polite debates regarding mailbox paint colors. This was a war council. Emily and I arrived early, a product of military habit, secured the perimeter before engaging the enemy. Ray stood by the projector, his detective's notes at the ready, while Agnes clutched her envelope of photographs as if it were a sacred text. Greg waited in the back, observing silently. The room fell to a hush as I stepped to the podium. "Neighbors," I began, my voice steady, though low. "This is not about property line disputes. This is not about decorative flags. This is about a woman who transformed our homeowners association into her personal militia. And it is time you witness the truth." Emily cued the screen. First, the video of the assault. Gasps rippled through the room as Vince and Tony appeared, their tactical vests glinting, their fists flying. The sickening thud of knuckles impacting Emily's face echoed through the speakers like a gunshot. Mothers in the crowd covered their mouths, while a father let out a quiet curse. Agnes's photographs followed, the control system notebook magnified on the projector. Neighbors leaned forward, their eyes scanning the images, some spotting their own families listed like targets. $500 for my purple mailbox, Mrs. Chen exclaimed. Murmurs intensified into shouts. While she was tracking my divorce. Ray took the microphone, his demeanor calm and methodical. Jennifer Allen diverted over $15,000 of your dues, channeling it into payments for fictitious enforcement entities, intimidation services, and private investigators. This was not community management. This was outright racketeering. Finally, Greg stepped forward. He pressed play on his recording. Jennifer's slurred voice filled the chamber. I hired those compliance goons to teach that SEAL's wife a lesson. Military types believe they're so tough, but everyone breaks when sufficient pressure is applied. A profound silence followed, then an eruption. Neighbors rose to their feet, shouting over one another. She assaulted a teacher. She threatened children. She stole our money. In the front row, Mrs. Patterson, the quiet vice president, brought down her gavel with the force of a drill sergeant. Order. According to Bylaw Section 74, I call for a vote of no confidence in President Jennifer Allen. Hands shot up with the speed of fireworks. 52 votes for removal, 1 abstention from the newcomer on Oak Street, who seemed bewildered by the proceedings, and precisely 1 vote against Jennifer. It was over, or rather it should have been. Jennifer lunged for the microphone, her hair disheveled, her eyes blazing with manic intensity. You fools! She shrieked. Do you imagine you're secure without me? I built this neighborhood. I maintained order. Without me, your property values will decay. Your families will disintegrate. You require someone with the fortitude to make the difficult decisions. 2 volunteers moved to escort her out, but she broke free, spinning to face the entire assembly. You believe removing me will halt everything? Her voice dropped to a chilling hiss. Phase 3 does not require HOA authorization. I possess resources extending far beyond this pathetic subdivision. Connections you cannot even fathom. A venomous smile spread across her face. And it has already commenced. The room erupted in a cacophony of panic, shouts, and demands. Parents seized their children's hands. Neighbors clustered together, whispering their fears about the implications of Phase 3. Ray barked orders as if he were back on the force. Families with school-aged children, coordinate carpools, secure your residences. No one walks alone during dismissal. We will treat this as an active threat until unequivocally proven otherwise. Mrs. Patterson attempted to restore order, her voice trembling. Per bylaws, the board must appoint an interim president immediately. I nominate Jack Harper. Hands shot up once more, this time unanimously. The gavel slammed. Jack Harper is appointed interim president. Agnes Porter, community liaison. Ray Delgado, security coordinator. The room thundered with applause, but beneath the ovation ran a palpable current of dread. Jennifer's gaze conveyed that she was not bluffing. As the crowd dispersed into the parking lot, buzzing with a mixture of anger and apprehension, my phone vibrated again. An unknown number, a new message. Phase 3 activated. School security weaker than they anticipate. Maximum impact tomorrow. Emily gasped. Ray cursed. Greg slammed his fist on the table. In that precise moment, every parent in the room grasped the chilling reality. Tomorrow was not a theoretical concept, it was a countdown. The Polk County Courthouse that morning resembled a theatrical stage more than a hall of justice. Marble floors gleamed under buzzing fluorescent lights, and the air was thick with the scent of disinfectant and palpable tension. Every seat in the gallery was occupied. Neighbors crammed in shoulder to shoulder, reporters lined the back rows, their cameras humming softly. Emily walked beside me, resplendent in her red dress, the same one she had worn to every critical juncture since this ordeal began. Ray carried his binder as if preparing for a trial. Agnes clutched her photographs. Greg maintained a stoic expression, a man reliving 15 years of psychological warfare. Jennifer entered last, clad in a designer suit, her expensive lawyer at her side. Her eyes swept across the assembled crowd like a monarch surveying traitors. When her gaze landed on me, her lips curved into a cold, knowing smile. Judge Martinez called the room to order. This hearing concerns allegations of harassment, misappropriation of HOA funds, intimidation, and threats directed at Sunset Elementary School. Ray took the stand first, his presentation calm and methodical, commencing with the video of Emily's assault. The courtroom collectively winced as the punch replayed on the monitors. One could hear the gasp ripple through the attendees when Emily stumbled back, her phone flying, her cheek swelling into a crimson mark. Agnes's black book photographs followed, projected large onto the courtroom screens. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably as their own names and identified pressure points appeared in Jennifer's distinctive handwriting. One juror muttered under his breath, "Jesus." Greg rose, his voice steady despite the immense gravity of the situation. "I was married to Jennifer Allen for 15 years. This pattern of financial manipulation, intimidation, and escalating threats is not new. It is intrinsically who she is when challenged." He pressed play on his recording. Jennifer's intoxicated voice filled the chamber. "I retained those compliance goons, but everyone breaks when sufficient pressure is applied." A reporter dropped his pen. The jury members leaned forward. Jennifer's lawyer buried his face in his notes. When Jennifer finally took the stand, against her lawyer's fervent advice, her carefully constructed mask began to crumble. "I did what was necessary," she spat. "I protected property values. Individuals like Jack Harper believe their military service exempts them from the rules. He is a danger, violent, unstable." Ray interjected with cold precision. "Ma'am, protecting property values does not involve transferring funds to private enforcers. It does not involve compensating individuals to assault teachers, and it certainly does not involve threatening schools." A murmur of agreement swept through the courtroom. Jennifer's face flushed crimson. Then the bailiff approached the judge with a folded note. Judge Martinez scanned it, her expression shifting from neutrality to outright shock. "Mrs. Allen," she stated slowly, "this court has just been apprised that the anonymous threat sent to Sunset Elementary has been traced to your personal cellular telephone." Gasps erupted throughout the room. Reporters scrambled to capture the unfolding drama. Neighbors stared in utter disbelief. Jennifer shot to her feet. "That is a fabrication. Someone planted it. Greg set me up." But Greg merely shook his head, his composure unwavering. The judge's gavel slammed. "Order! This court takes terroristic threats with extreme seriousness. Combined with the evidence presented, this confirms a pattern of escalating harassment and endangerment." Jennifer's composure completely shattered. She shrieked, lunging against the bailiff's restraint, screaming accusations at everyone present. Me, Greg, even Agnes. "You are all conspiring against me. You will regret this. You have no idea what I am capable of." The jury remained impassive. The neighbors did not believe her. The evidence had spoken with a clarity far exceeding her hysterical pronouncements. When the verdict was delivered, guilty on charges of harassment, intimidation, misuse of funds, assault by proxy, and terroristic threats, the room collectively exhaled. Jennifer Allen, once the untouchable queen of her manicured kingdom, was now merely a defendant, shackled by the consequences of her actions. Yet even as she was led away, her final words echoed like a curse. "This is not over." Phase 3 was merely the beginning. The resounding echo of the gavel still lingered in my ears as the bailiff escorted Jennifer away in shackles. Her designer heels scraped against the marble floor, each step a stark reminder of her precipitous fall. Judge Martinez's voice carried through the chamber like thunder. 18 months of probation with electronic monitoring, $8,000 in restitution, 200 hours of community service, a mandatory mental health evaluation, and a lifetime ban from any homeowner association leadership positions. The gallery erupted. Some cheered, others wept. Neighbors who had once whispered in fear now stood tall, clapping as if a tyrant had finally been overthrown. Reporters surged towards the exits, chasing their next headlines. Emily squeezed my hand, her eyes bright with profound relief. "It's over, Jack. Finally over." I yearned to believe her words. Outside, the courthouse steps had transformed into a scene of jubilant celebration. Parents embraced their children. Agnes wept openly, Mrs. Patterson wrapping a comforting arm around her shoulders. Even Carl appeared, his posture hunched but his voice earnest as he confessed, "I am sorry. Fear drove my actions, but I will help rebuild, if you will permit me." I shook his hand. "We will begin anew, together." That evening, our cul-de-sac glowed as if illuminated for the 4th of July. Grills sizzled, children ran barefoot through sprinklers, and neighbors toasted with cold beer, their laughter finally unburdened after months of anxiety. The oppressive shadow of Jennifer's influence had finally lifted. However, as the laughter subsided and Emily nestled under my arm on the porch swing, Ray cleared his throat. His Hawaiian shirt rustled as he shifted uncomfortably. "Jack," he said quietly, "there's something you should be aware of." The porch light caught his face, weathered and honest, but with a flicker of something more profound. "You remember that school threat message?" My chest tightened. The one traced back to Jennifer's phone. Ray nodded slowly. "After she sent that Phase 3 text to Greg, I had access to her confiscated device. I might have forwarded a message from her phone to yours, just to ensure the court grasped the extent of her intentions." Silence descended like a heavy fog. Emily's eyes widened. "Ray, you mean I didn't fabricate her malice?" Ray cut in quickly. "She was escalating. She did threaten violence, but I nudged the narrative forward. I left the system with no room to dismiss her as merely an overzealous HOA president. They had to perceive her for what she truly was." I leaned back, studying him. A part of me burned with unease. Evidence tampering was a perilous game, yet another part understood that this was war by another name. And in war, sometimes a decisive push was necessary to neutralize the threat. Emily whispered, "So, justice was engineered." Ray shook his head. "Justice was safeguarded. She had already crossed every conceivable boundary. My only action was to ensure she could not evade consequences through loopholes." I observed him for a significant duration, then a slow, wry grin appeared on my face. He chuckled, the burden lifting from his shoulders. "Fair enough," he said. "Just remember not to cross me, Ray." Out on the expansive lawn, Agnes was genuinely laughing with friends, a sight unseen for years. Carl, perhaps seeking atonement, helped with the task of hanging decorative lights. For the first time in many months, I allowed myself to believe that this community could recover. Still, Jennifer's final pronouncements echoed in my mind. Phase 3 was just the beginning, she had said. Perhaps she was sincere. Perhaps it was mere bravado. Regardless, the nature of our struggle had fundamentally changed. She was no longer a factor. The community was liberated, and should another peril ever emerge, we would be prepared. Because certain neighborhoods do not crumble under pressure, they emerge stronger. Jennifer Allen's residence remained dark for weeks following the court's decision. The once immaculate garden began to thin. The mailbox stood at an awkward angle, and for the first time in many years, no one on the street received official notifications of infractions. The sold sign was quickly erected. By the time removal vehicles arrived, the neighborhood had already undergone a transformation. We resumed our communal gatherings. Children engaged in games until dusk, free from the apprehension of parents scanning for any signs of enforcement. Agnes prepared baked goods for a substantial portion of the cul-de-sac residents. Even Carl, burdened by his past transgressions, started to regain confidence by actively participating in every neighborhood initiative. Emily's visible injuries healed, but her resolve remained undimmed. She took on a leadership role in a parent-led safety group at Sunset Elementary. Every child's departure from school was now meticulously managed, like a well-rehearsed operation. No child was ever permitted to walk home unsupervised. Ray lauded it as the most effective neighborhood watch program this entire county had ever witnessed. One evening, while tending to grilling food at a casual outdoor gathering, I observed neighbors interacting joyfully. Illuminated lanterns cast a warm glow from the trees. Melodies drifted from a portable sound system. For the first time in an extended period, it felt genuinely like home again. Emily rested against me, her voice a soft whisper. "Do you think we'll ever return to how things were?" she inquired. "You know, Disagreements over lawn watering and canines barking? I gently kissed her forehead. Perhaps, I replied, but at least now, those disagreements will be straightforward, not a form of psychological manipulation. We both shared a laugh, and for that fleeting moment, it felt as though the conflict had truly concluded. However, tranquility rarely endures indefinitely. A fortnight later, a moving truck appeared at Jennifer's former residence. I stood by the roadside, observing unfamiliar individuals unloading substantial crates. These weren't household furnishings. They were instruments, advanced surveillance devices, satellite receivers, and imposing metallic containers secured with locks. The new occupants were noticeably reserved. The gentleman perpetually wore dark, reflective eyewear, even as twilight descended. The woman issued instructions to the movers with the sharp cadence of a military commander, and affixed to the rear of their truck, a bumper sticker caught my attention. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Emily approached, her innate teacher's instincts already sensing unease. Jack, she stated, they aren't merely establishing a residence, they're preparing for a siege. Across the street, Ray lowered his newspaper, his gaze sharp. Something feels amiss, he commented. That's not standard residential security. That appears to be sophisticated surveillance equipment. Agnes murmured, her voice almost a tremor. Do you suppose Jennifer orchestrated this? I offered no immediate response, but a profound sensation of dread, akin to the cold apprehension I'd experienced during my time in service, settled within me. It was the unshakable feeling that our newfound peace was ephemeral, precarious, and that a new confrontation might already be looming on the horizon. As the sun dipped below the skyline of our formerly tranquil neighborhood, a faint crimson gleam from recording indicators activated on the new neighbor's porch, observing, anticipating. Emily interlaced her fingers with mine. Her tone was composed, yet her grasp was firm. Jack, what if Jennifer wasn't the conclusion of Phase 3? I looked towards the illuminated cameras, the shadowed windows, and the indistinct figures moving within, and a chilling certainty confirmed her suspicion. Some conflicts do not truly end, they merely transition to new disguises.